What's up guys, it's Drew here and welcome back to FudgeMuppet. After a fortnight without a Skyrim build, I'm excited to be back with another fully remastered build. Not only have we given the build an all new, fully fleshed out backstory, but we've totally changed the skills, perks and playstyle to be even more effective and even truer to the lore. This is the Witchhunter. The Witchhunter represents a centuries old tradition, vowing to ensure balance is held in Tamriel. Using his mastery of magicka and deadly aim with the bow, the Witchhunter seeks out and destroys any necromancers, mages, or Daedra worshippers who get too hungry for power. It is his personal responsibility to keep them in check, and any who threaten to disrupt the peace will face his relentless wrath. As you may have noticed, this build is inspired by one of the classes from Oblivion, and we've tried to keep it as close to the outline while also bringing it to life, making it powerful, but most importantly, a lot of fun to play. Before we get into it, don't forget that timestamps can be found in the description to help you find your way around the video. But with that out of the way, let's get straight into it. First up, we have the Witchhunter's race, standing stone, and stats. The Witchhunter is a Breton, and this works perfectly for the build as he'll often be exposed to magic-using enemies. As a Breton, he'll have an innate 25% resistance to magic. Also, his Breton blood allows him to use the Dragon Skin ability, absorbing 50% of magicka from hostile spells for 60 seconds. Lastly, being a Breton means the Witchhunter will start off with plus 10 to Conjuration. Early in the game, the Lover Stone is the best pick for leveling all of his various skills. Once those are leveled, there's only one viable stone to pick, and this is the Lord Stone, which provides 50 additional points of armor rating and 25% bonus to all magic resistances. The Atronach Stone would fit the roleplaying quite well, but it would really hinder your conjuration spells. As for stat spread, put a 33% investment into each. The Witchhunter relies on all three pretty equally. Health is important to keep you tanky, magicka is a must to keep summoning and firing destruction spells, and stamina is important for slowing time and zooming with the bow. In the wake of the wide-scale destruction caused by the Oblivion Crisis, as well as the dissolution of the Mages Guild and the rise of the nefarious necromancer Mannimarco, some people were beginning to lose faith in magic, while others feared the very presence of it in the world around them. In troubled times like these, a small group of mages, along with some of the more courageous, concerned commoners, banded together with the shared vision of keeping arcane power tamed and under control. Their lands had come so close to the brink of annihilation that these humble folks took it upon themselves to play their part, safeguarding Tamriel and preventing it from repeating history. This modest group believed that in order for peace to exist, magic had to be regulated and held in balance. This responsibility went beyond simply fighting any form of dark magic. The emphasis on equality and an equilibrium in the supernatural forces meant allowing all forms of magic to flourish, while not allowing any to acquire too much power. The more militant members of this organization became known as witch hunters. They would hunt down rogue groups of power-hungry necromancers, dastardly mages, and even Daedra worshippers who threatened to upset the delicate balance. 200 years after the initial rise of the witch hunters, a descendant of one of their founders, a young Breton, joined their cause. This witch hunter followed in the footsteps of his father and all of the men in his family for generations. Once he reached adulthood, his father passed down to him a sentimental gift that had served his family well for many years and many bloody battles. This gift was an ebony bow. It was unlike any bow he'd seen before. It was clearly old, yet it hadn't taken a scratch of damage. Crafted by members of the witch hunter cause, this bow was enchanted specifically to deal with magic users. When the witch hunter gripped it in his hands, he felt the energy of it. It was as if the thing was alive. He proceeded to train night and day. While the sun hung in the sky, he fired arrows at the straw men until his fingers were red and calloused. And after dark, he read by candlelight, learning the arts of destruction and conjuration. In order to maintain a balance in magic, he needed to understand it. And what better way to strike down an ambitious mage than with the same forces they used? Even though the witch hunter had yet to encounter any forces of evil edging too close to megalomania, he used his wits to think like one, teaching himself to predict them when the time came to actually confront one. After some years mastering his craft, the witch hunter decided he needed to move on from his small patch of Cyrodiil. His father and the many other witch hunters in the area kept the surrounding terrain free from tyrannical mages and servants of the dead, so the witch hunter was of little use here. After catching wind of the rumours travelling south from the land of the Nords, the witch hunter set his sights on Skyrim. There he could monitor the influence of the supposedly returning dragons, ensuring the balance wouldn't be toppled by such ancient forces. He was also certain he'd find missions on the way, and he wasn't wrong. After a day of hiking, as the sun was setting over his his shoulder, the witch hunter passed a small chapel of Debella. He noticed a man lurking in the cemetery next to the building, so he crouched down to avoid drawing any attention. The man appeared to be robbing the grave of a recently deceased woman, but this man was garbed in black robes, far too well tailored to be the robes of a poverty-stricken thief. The man heaved the dirt-covered corpse over his shoulder before glancing around and eventually stalking out of the cemetery. Disgusted, the witch hunter reached for his quiver, counting his arrows. He could have brought the grave robber to his knees then and there, but instead he silently followed. The grave robber eventually arrived at a small hut surrounded by pikes, some of which featured the rotten skewered heads of goats and cows. The witch hunter set himself up just outside the hut. Through the open window he could see a total of 4 necromancers. The one in the center, the grave robber, laid the corpse down on a table and began chanting. The witch hunter spat, repulsed by the dark deeds he was witnessing. He drew an arrow from his quiver and knocked it on the string of his bow. This would be the first living target he'd ever fired at, and he couldn't think of a more deserving recipient. He took a deep breath, allowing half of it to escape from his nose, and then, with the grave robber's head directly in his line of sight, he loosed. The arrow let out the faintest whistle as it flew quickly and cleanly from the bow. It caught the grave robber square in the temple, and he went down instantly with a firm thud. Springing to his feet, the witch hunter ran closer to the hut's entrance, slinging his bow back over his shoulder as he did so. Chaotic noise rose from the hut as the other necromancers shouted in surprise. The witch hunter began charging a destruction spell between his hands, and as the 3 remaining mages emerged from the hut, he cast. The sky suddenly lit up from the energy of the blast, and as the electricity engulfed the first necromancer, it almost seemed like daytime. For the shortest moment, the witch hunter saw the fear on their faces as the lightning spread from the first victim and onto them. They all died in unison. Satisfied with his first tangible contribution to the sacred cause, the witch hunter continued north as the moon continued to rise overhead. The witch hunter walked for a few hours and was closing in on the border between Cyrodiil and Skyrim, but exhausted from his confrontation and the long day of hiking, he set up camp in the Dural Mountains. Just as the campfire was returning the blood to his cold, tired limbs, the witch hunter was ambushed by an Imperial patrol and taken into custody. After escaping Helgen with his life, the witch hunter's cause for travelling to Skyrim was justified. The dragons have in fact returned, and the power of the one he saw was enough to destroy an entire town effortlessly. As a result, he will make it a priority to learn as much as he can about the return of these ancient creatures. Despite this primary objective, he will still carry out the will of the witch hunters wherever possible, tracking down power-hungry gangs of necromancers and Daedra worshippers. However, when he was captured, he lost his family's treasured bow, so it will also be a priority for him to obtain an ebony bow that he can enchant specially to deal with mages. Until then though, his skill with a bow and arrow makes it any old enchanted bow viable while he builds up to acquiring the ebony bow. As for factions, he will obviously follow the main story, considering his role as the Dragonborn the perfect way to be in charge of controlling and regulating the power and influence of dragons. This leads into the Dragonborn DLC, where he'll have the added motivation of crippling the devious ambitions of the tyrannical dragon priest Marat. Should he be left to gain forbidden knowledge unchecked, few can fathom what he'd be able to accomplish. He will join the Dawnguard in order to rid the province of Harkon and his motivated cult of vampires. The College of Winterhold makes for another relevant questline, as the acquisition of as much magical knowledge as possible will hugely benefit the Witch Hunter. It will also allow him to be sure the college is aiding aspiring mages responsibly. Lastly, the Companions make for another viable faction to join, although we recommend curing the werewolf form, as this curse is notorious for being unpredictable, and the reckless use of such power doesn't fly with the Witch Hunters. So, now that we have the Witch Hunter's backstory, roleplaying and factions out of the way, this is how they'll affect his skills, spells, perks, and his overall playstyle. The main skills for this build are Archery, Destruction, Conjuration, Enchanting, and a new addition, Sneak. Before we get into the specific perks for these skills, let's quickly talk about the Destruction and Conjuration spells the Witch Hunter will need in his arsenal. It's pretty straightforward really. He'll be sticking mostly to the Flame Atronach Conjuration spell due to his underlying hesitation when calling upon servants from other worlds. He knows the risks, so keeps it simple, but feel free to experiment with some of the other Atronachs if you can justify it within the lore and the roleplaying of the build. As for destruction spells, he'll use any of the shock-based spells. Which ones to use is pretty subjective, but a favourite of ours is Chain Lightning. But now you know which spells to go after, let's get right into the Witch Hunter's essential perks. As is pretty clear from the Witch Hunter's backstory, as well as what little lore we have of this group of vigilantes, marksmanship is one of the fundamental skills of the Witch Hunter. Fortunately, putting an arrow between the eyes of evil mages is the hunter's forte, forte, and from the archery skill tree, we suggest taking every perk and every rank. The only perk you shouldn't max out is critical shot. 1 perk point here is all you need. Bullseye is a great pick here, as it offers a 15% chance to paralyze the target for a few seconds, preventing them from casting any spells in your direction. Also, with quick shot and ranger, your enemies won't be able to keep up with you as you dart around dodging their projectile spells. With quick shot, you can draw your bow 30% faster, and with ranger, you can move faster while the bow is drawn. Next up, we have destruction, and this is the witch hunter's primary method of taking down foes. As a witch hunter, having a strong understanding of the power behind magic is essential, and with such foreign knowledge, the witch hunter can effectively fight fire with fire, or in his particular case, fight fire with bolts of lightning. From this skill tree, take the left branch, the third branch, the fourth branch, up to Adept Destruction, and then the entire right hand branch. Using shock destruction spells means augmented shock and disintegrate are hugely useful as they bolster your shock damage, but you'll also notice that we've included the fire damage perks on the left. These are well worth the investment due to the fire damage enchantment you'll have on your trademark bow. The witch hunter often finds himself up against necromancers or Daedra worshippers, and these evil beings share a common interest, summoning unnatural forces to do their bidding. Much like with destruction, the witch hunter counters this by being proficient with the school of magic himself, and he'll often turn to a flame atronach to give him some cover fire as the battle rages on. From the conjuration skill tree, we recommend taking the entire left branch up to and including Twin Souls, and then the right hand branch excluding Master Conjuration. Twin Souls is great as it allows you to summon 2 atronachs at once to give you twice the support. On top of this, the perk just before it, Elemental Potency, will make these atronachs 50% more powerful. Outside of combat, the witch hunters place a heavy emphasis on outsmarting their foes, preparing for fights by applying enchantments, which will prey upon their weaknesses. And that's why the witch hunter's bow is so deadly when pitted against magic users. Evidently, an investment in enchanting is a must for this build. From this tree, go for the middle branch up to and including extra effect. Lastly, we have a new addition to the witch hunter, as his backstory suggests, as well as the lore regarding a witch hunter's ability to tactically outplay his or her foe, the sneak skill seemed like a no-brainer. From this skill tree, take everything except for Assassin's Blade. Getting deadly aim will make bow sneak attacks do 3 times the damage, and silence will let you walk and run freely without affecting your chances of being detected. With the witch hunter's skills, spells, and perks outlined, let's get into how it'll all come together in combat. The witch hunter will stealthily survey the area before battle, identifying the positions and capabilities of his enemies. Then he'll execute as many sneak attacks with his bow as possible before getting discovered. Once discovered, the primary source of damage output will be destruction. Now you can use up all of your magicka stores zapping away. When you need to replenish magicka, take a break by switching back to the bow. At any point after being detected, you can call upon flame atronachs to provide cover fire and to suck up some of the incoming damage. As for gear, the witch hunter will stick to a humble common folk attire. He'll wear the clothes literally called cloves, which you can pick up from the Radiant Raiment in Solitude. Along with that, he'll wear a cowl, gloves, boots, a ring, and a necklace. All of these items can be enchanted twice. The enchantments you'll want to put on these are Fortify Archery, Fortify Conjuration, and Fortify Destruction. If you prioritize Fortify Destruction, you'll easily be able to cast expert level spells efficiently despite only having the adept level perk. As for weapons, the witch hunter will replicate his family bow, which happens to be an ebony bow with the fiery soul trap and shock damage enchantments. There you have it, guys. Subscribe to FudgeMuppet for more of the best builds on YouTube, and give the video a like if you enjoyed it. If you're as hyped for E3 and Bethesda's announcements as we are, make sure you follow us on social media. We'll be in LA at the event, bringing you updates as they happen, so get down to the description where you can find all the links to our accounts. Also in the description are timestamps to help you navigate throughout the video. As always, thanks so much for watching, guys. I've been Drew, and I look forward to nerding out with you again very soon.